spending your time to meet with us. We've got a full agenda, a lot of information to come out. We're really wanting to get it out, so we're glad to be here. I want to just sort of go over some logistics. We've got the two aisles here. We're going to have an opportunity for question and answers at the end. We're going to put two mics up here. What I would appreciate you if you could, come up behind the mic and line up behind it, so you can have your opportunity to ask your question, and then we'll go back and forth from one mic to the other. I'm just trying to think. I don't actually know where the restrooms are. I think they're out here. In case you do that, I'm assuming you all probably know that. For media, we will meet with you after the public meeting and give you some opportunity to ask the questions. So if you could hold your questions off even during the community part, I would appreciate that. I'm going to go ahead and open up the meeting here. We've got Gwen, and I hate Lockett. I don't want to mispronounce your name. La Plata County Commissioner. I'm guessing many of you already know.
It's all right. I'm Gwen Lackle, La Plata County Commissioner. Thank you all very much for being here tonight. This is Dean Berkey. He's the mayor of Durango. And on behalf of my fellow commissioners, Brad Blake, would you stand? Julie Westendorf, would you stand? And our La Plata County staff, I want to thank you all for being here tonight. I'd also like to introduce a few folks. We will be joined by the Navajo Nation President tonight, Russell Begay, his Vice President, Jonathan Nez, the Navajo Nation EPA Director, Dr. Ben, the Attorney General, Ethel Branch, and the Chief of Staff, Robert Joe. So they will be arriving shortly. I don't believe they're here yet. If you are, please raise your hand. Okay. All right. We have members of the governor's staff here, Mike King and John Swarthout. I'm not sure where John is, but thank you all for being here. Senator Bennett's office is represented. John Benny, thank you. And Congressman Tipton's office has been, if she's not here, she's been in a whole lot of meetings, so I actually don't blame her for coming to another meeting. And then Congressman, or the Senator Cory Gardner staff have been in town as well. Is there a representative here? Okay. Sorry if I've overlooked anybody. The mayor's been introduced, members of the city council. But again, I want to thank you for your concern. I want to thank you for your patience. We have all been anxiously awaiting the water quality and other technical information from the EPA. So we're going to get a lot more information tonight than we've had the past few days. If there's one thing that's very clear to me, it's that our community not only loves the Animas River, but it's our lifeblood and the lifeblood for the fish and wildlife that depend upon it. It's much, much more than just a river. We're here tonight to let you know that the city and the county and the health department are literally working around the clock to protect public health, safety, and welfare as a result of the toxic waste spill from the Gold King mine above Silverton. We've reached out and we've begun coordinating with our sister counties, cities, and nations, as well as the state and federal agencies you see here tonight. Folks, the river is still closed. We urge you to stay out of the water. Please keep your children and your dogs out of the river, even though it's looking a little more clear. But until we have the water quality data that it is safe, the river will remain closed, and it will require consultation with all of the agencies that we've been working with to make a determination on whether or not to open up the river. And besides, it's the sheriff's job, so it's up to him. Today, in consultation with the Southern Ute Indian Tribe, the town of Silverton, San Juan Basin Health Department, San Juan County, Colorado, and San Juan County, New Mexico, the city of Durango and La Plata County jointly declared a state of local emergency due to the contamination, and in order to to engage state and federal resources to assist all of our communities in recovery. We're doing all we can to bring state and federal resources to bear. We are also looking ahead of this immediate situation, and we are urging the EPA to provide us with an ongoing water quality monitoring plan, a cleanup plan, as well as an assessment of what went wrong and a detailed assessment of other abandoned mines that may pose a threat to the Animas River. Thank you again for being here. With that, I'll turn it over to the mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Gwen. I'd like to also acknowledge my compatriots on City Council, former Mayor Dick White, the former Mayor Speedy Marbury, and Christina has made it here yet or not. She's been active in today's ongoing meetings. I know I can speak for Gwen, both of us, when I say that our community is tough and resilient. We can work and continue to work together to come out on the other side of this stronger as a community. We all know the long history of mining in our region. We know that this catastrophe, even as the event has happened, when the plume has come and gone, we will command the resources to fully evaluate the long-term impacts to assure the environmental, the economic, and the public safety is restored to its fullest in our community. Additionally, for those of you and us that are concerned about the accountability at the federal and state levels, you should know that our U.S. Senators, Senator Mike Bennett and Senator Cory Gardner, were both on the river this morning, looking at the same thing we've been looking at for the past 4 days, 5 days, this day 5 days catastrophe. Also, State Senator Alan Roberts was in the EPA briefing this morning. State Representative Jay Paul Brown was also in attendance at that meeting. I can assure you that at that level, we have a lot of eyes on our community, and that full accountability will prevail. Earlier this afternoon, I received that call from the governor of the state of Colorado, John Hickenlooper, who we all know that has a soft spot in his heart for Durango, and he assured us that the governor will be here on Tuesday to discuss, among other things, the potential benefits of the declaration of emergency by the state of Colorado, which is in preparation as we speak. This will assist our community in a full recovery, no matter how long it takes. And as I reminded the governor, we need to look at the potential impact of the hundreds of mines still above Silverton with the capability of a repeat performance. And I think that concludes our talk, and we'd like to turn over to the EPA for the things that we all be looking forward to. Thank you.
Thanks. I believe next on deck is EPA Region 8 Administrator Sean McGrath. Thanks for coming out.
Thank you, Commissioner. Can everybody hear me if I just sit at my table here? Good. I do have some notes that I want to be able to refer to, so I'll just stay seated, not out of disrespect. I do want to thank Commissioner Lackland and Mayor Berkey for their introductory remarks, but also to really praise the response from the community. Your county commission, your city staff are really busting their tails. Sheriff Smith, Deanne, and Butch, your incident commanders, I got to tell you, they are doing everything they can. They're pushing EPA as hard as they can to get information. We're communicating as best we can to respond to what is admittedly a difficult and anxious causing a situation. And so things are moving quickly, but we're all doing the best we can. But I do want to just point out at the top that your folks here are just doing a marvelous job. What I want to cover in my opening remarks is to give an update where we are with this event. I was out here on Friday and kind of discussed how it happened and the situation at the time. I want to build on that here and give you the latest on where we are by covering what's going on at the mine site, what's going on with the plume itself. I'll talk briefly about the data before I turn it over to the real expert that we have here. I know that an issue that all of you have, or many of you have raised with us regarding compensation is something that you want to hear about, and I'll be able to address that. And then talk about the work that we're doing with drinking water wells. So first, the situation update at the mine. I think this is generally a good news story in terms of where we are up at the mine currently. The volume of the discharge that continues to come out of the mine is decreasing. It's gone from 700 the last couple of days down to 500 gallons per minute, and it seems to be holding around there. Yesterday we had opened up two settlement ponds to treat that water that's coming out of the mine. Today we've opened up two additional settlement ponds, so when that water comes out, it's still acid mine drainage. We treat it with caustic soda and flocculant to try to pull out some of the sediment and the heavy metals that's in that water, as well as to treat the pH. What we're seeing is the water that then is being discharged into Cement Creek at this point is running clear. So we're no longer contributing that yellow discharge into the Animas. Another piece of news about the discharge. When this first happened on this last Wednesday, we had some initial estimates of the volume of the water that came out. We had estimated about 1 million gallons, and that was an estimation based on the volume of what we thought was in that reservoir of wastewater. What we didn't know at the time was there was a stream gauge just downstream on Cement Creek that USGS, the U.S. Geological Survey, maintains. We became aware of that, and over the last couple of days have been working with them to get a much better estimation of what that actual discharge was. They've been doing a lot of work over the last few days to get to that number. This is still preliminary, but I do want to make it available here. USGS does estimate that the actual volume of the discharge was 3 million gallons. Now, where that is helpful to us is now we have a much more reliable estimate of the volume that will help us in our work on modeling how this behaved and continue to behave over the coming weeks and months. So getting to Commissioner, to one of your questions about a cleanup plan, this is critical information for us so that we can see how that settlement, as it entered the Animas, how it settled out, and how it'll give us better information to devise a plan or a cleanup and really longer term response to this issue. And what I mean by longer term, I talked about this on Friday, but as this plume travels down the river, it does settle out, and so that goes to the river bed. We do expect that over the coming months and years, that as there are surges in the river, that sediment can get kicked up. So we'll really need to have long-term monitoring plans to make sure that we're not going to get surprised, and that if it's appropriate at some time in the future that we'll need to close water intakes, for example, we'll be prepared to do that. In terms of the situation update regarding the plume, we have an airplane that has been doing daily flights down the river to really try to track that plume. Today, the information we got back was that the leading edge of the plume is no longer discernible from the aircraft. That's not to say that on the ground that you might be able to see that there's increased cloudiness in the water, but from the aircraft, whereas 2 days ago it was very visible, right? Today there's no longer a discernible leading edge of that plume. I do think that in part we can thank the Bureau of Reclamation. They the release of water out of Navajo Reservoir, which I think really is serving to help dilute some of that plume. Additionally, the aircraft informed us that from Farmington north up the river, they were seeing improved clearing water. Again, this is just visibly, but by sight, it looks like the water is getting clear, and hopefully that's the experience here for you on the ground as well. In terms of data, what I want to say here, just briefly, we very much understand and have heard you all, heard your representatives very loud and clear, the importance of really having a handle on what is in the water and what that means. And we've been pushing our lab folks as hard as we could to get the samples back, and there is just a process here that takes place in doing the lab work and then getting it to the experts to do the quality control and to finalize it. But we did this morning make that first batch of samples available on our website. We posted it. I have Region 8's toxicologist here, Deb McKean, and Deb will go into more detail and what that information means. I will say here that we're doing ongoing continuous sampling, and as I said, this is the results that were posted this morning, August 5th and 6th. August 7th data is now with the experts. They're going to be working through the night, evaluating that and preparing that for release as well. So that will be important to inform us of, are we still on that downward trajectory that the sediments, the metals in the plume are settling out. In terms of the question about compensation, many of you have asked the question, geez, what about my rafting company that's been impacted and the trips that we had to cancel, or I mean, there's a host of potential impacts here that this has created. The information that I can share today is that when there is personal injury or property damage that was caused by the United States government, then there is a process available to file a claim. And in this case, the EPA regs, 40 CFR Part 10, allows us to do this. And along with the regulations, we have guidance that speaks to what documentation is necessary to support a claim for both loss of employment, loss of income, and other such losses. There is a form that you will need to fill out, and it's called Standard Form 95. We've posted that on our website. I'll read you the website here, but I hopefully that's also going around. I saw a press release out. I think it's in there as well. But the website is EPAOSC, that's one word, EPAOSC.org / and this is again all one word, Gold King Mine. So www.epaosc.org / Gold King Mine. And when you get on the website, you'll need to go to the documents section, and that's where you'll find the form. In terms of wells, so with the assistance of La Plata County and the city of Durango, we did establish a call center to take calls if anybody was concerned that their drinking water well or their private wells, you saw any discoloration or you sensed any problems. We set up that call center, and if If we get those calls, we send people out to take samples, and then we also have drinking water, bottled water available that we make available. And today, all the requests for drinking water have been filled, and all the requests for ag water have been filled. So it's not just drinking water here. It's also if you have livestock that you have concerns, we can absolutely work with you on that. And the on the monitoring piece, last thing that I did miss saying is we're out there again today. We're also pulling samples called opportunity samples when we're walking up the river. If we see some sediment, we grab some of those samples. So we're also beginning the process of doing the analysis of what's in that sediment that's already washed up, on the banks. Additionally, we will be doing comprehensive analysis of the mine waste deposits that are deposited, and that's something that is going to take some time. But we started that process, and more to come on that. And with that, Commissioner, I turn it back to the budget.
So next is Butch. You're on for next.
I'm on, huh?
You're on.
I'll go ahead and just add a little bit. On Thursday evening, LaPlata County opened up their call center, and since that time, we've taken 270 calls and reacted to 90. And in that process, as Sean indicated, our first goal was to address the people that live on wells that had wells that were immediately adjacent to the river, and also probably heavily influenced. So with that, the EPA folks came to town. We went ahead and started delivering water to those people, and that's been a very productive program for us, because I think that was the first thing we started worrying about was the pollution that could influence some of those wells. And as he also indicated, we've been able to keep abreast and provide water to all those people that have been involved. Our goal, let me go ahead with the goals of what we're doing here. Okay. Our goals are to continue to monitor and to work with the EPA folks as they're in here. They're bringing in additional team and additional professional support for us. We'll be continuing to develop tracking and testing programs for those wells that are in the corridor along the Animas River. But in particular, we're going to be stressing those wells for immediately adjacent. So that's going to be an ongoing process for us. Also, on Wednesday night, we received a call from the Colorado Office of Emergency Management of the State Health Department. We started notifying irrigators. Obviously, the irrigators in the upper end of the Animas Valley were our first concern. And we were able to get those large canals shut down and prevent a lot of that sediment from going down the irrigation ditches. And so we will be working with them, the EPA people in particular, trying to figure out the best manner in which we can get those canals back up and running and address any sedimentation issues that will be in there. The future testing, which Sean indicated they are going to perform, will become very vital to us. We understand that we're doing testing as we speak on the water itself in the river, but as we have all seen throughout our community, there's a lot of sedimentation that is laying in the bottom of the river, and our concern and worry has been that is brought back to the surface through storm activity. We want to know what that is, what problem that's going to deliver to us, so we're going to be monitoring that very closely and working with them. I think the other thing that's the most important thing for us is to continue to monitor. We will be doing that, and the future testing that we will be doing is very important to us, and how we react to certain things in the future. So I think at this time I'll stop instead of babbling on, because I'm sure we're going to get some very specific questions from you out there in the audience, and I would rather address those as they come up.
Leanne Jackson.
Great, thank you, Butch. My name is Leanne Jalon, and I am the director of San Juan Basin health department, which is your local health department. And we were asked by the Plata County Emergency Management to join this response first thing Thursday morning. And we have been on scene with emergency management, working jointly around the clock since that time. And we would just like to express that we are your local public health agency, so we care deeply about the health of this community. We care about your health. We're doing everything we can to get information to help all of us navigate this situation. And we're obviously saddened by it and experiencing a difficult event, but our job is to make this event as palatable and able as a community to deal with it. So on that note, we did receive new data. We all talked about it. Results are coming from the EPA as we speak. We cannot use that data in that form. We need it analyzed and explained through the Agency of Toxic Substance and Disease Registry. So that work has begun. They will analyze that data. We requested support from State Health, which is known as Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, CDPHE. That help will be on the ground tomorrow to help ATSDR, which is Agency for Toxic Substance and Disease Registry, to interpret this data, to produce some preliminary results that will help local public health in responding to this event. We continue to look out for your health, and I need you all to help us by letting us know what your needs are so we can get them met. That's all I have. Sure?
I guess that's me. Tonight, I guess I'd like to start by just saying thank you. First of all, thank you to my staff. I have 136 incredible employees of the Plata County Sheriff's Office that have really stepped up during this incident to serve you. It's kind of been our new mantra of the Sheriff's Office, a service first agency, and we've seen it in action each and every day as my folks came out there to make sure that we were protecting you throughout this process. Second, I'd like to say thank you to our regional and community partners. The local response to this incident has been amazing. We've heard a lot of talk about the speed at which things have progressed. I will assure you, that the local response from the city of Durango, Plata County, San Juan Basic Health, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, the Southern Union Tribe, the list goes on. I could sit here all night. Has been amazing. We got in the room early. We began making decisions that were meant to protect all of you and your safety, and we've been working in that vein ever since, and it's been incredible to watch. We've put in long hours each and every day. No one talked about time off or days off, and it's been a good thing to see in our community because we have experienced something unique that doesn't happen typically, and you can trust the people that are in the positions that are leading this community because it's been great. And finally, I'd like to say thank you to all of you. We put out an order that says our river's closed, the lifeblood of our community. There's no way that I could make that happen without your assistance. I assure you it's done for your health. You've heard a lot of talk tonight about the clearing of the water and other things, and people will begin to ask questions about, is it safe to go back in the water? I ask for your continued support to trust us in making the right decisions, because we're not going to say it's safe until it is. As we talked about sedimentation on the bottom of the river that has not fully been tested, all of those components that play into whether or not your health is at risk is what we want to assess before we tell you it's okay. So please continue to work with us, have some patience. I understand many of you, this is your economic vitality, this is the way of life that we have here, but please trust that we are not taking this decision lightly and that we have your best interests at heart, and we will not do this until the time is right. I know there's a lot of concern. You heard a lot talked about water wells. While I've had to play a role in my position, I'm one of those homeowners. I have a wife at home that is very concerned about what this means to us, as my water well is 50 feet from the Animas River, and we are waiting for those results like many of you. So just please trust us to take the time to do the due diligence, to inform you properly, and make sure that when we do say things are okay, that they're okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mike King. Here we go. Mike King, he's with the Department of Natural Resources. Sure, he's representing Governor John Hickenlooper.
As she said, my name is Mike King. I'm the Executive Director of the Department of Natural Resources. I had, by chance, I was here last Wednesday and when this event occurred and actually flew over the plume as it was coming towards Durango on Thursday. I want to assure you that the Governor understands as Coloradans how much we value our natural resources and our rivers in particular. And I can't think of a community that is more has a more integrated and integral relationship with its river than this one with the Animas. It's truly extraordinary how much of a part of the fabric it is, from its recreation, its economic impacts, to what it does for ag and just the essence of life in this part of the state. So I have two announcements, and the mayor kind of hit on them. The first is, in furtherance of this understanding of the relationship, the governor this afternoon verbally declared a state declaration disaster order. What that does is a few things. Number one, it immediately makes $500,000 available to the state of Colorado to assist with the local response for all of the issues, the myriad issues. It authorizes the Office of Emergency Management to more fully integrate and pull resources from whatever state department is appropriate to respond to this incident. So those are two very big things. The third thing it does is it suspends all rules if those rules are standing in the way of the emergency response, and we've already utilized that flexibility this afternoon by authorizing the city of Durango to fill Durango Terminal Reservoir an additional 3 vertical feet to help with water supply for the city of Durango. So we continue to work with EPA, monitor what's going on up at the mine, both with the Division of Reclamation, Mine and Safety, and Colorado Parks and Wildlife here out of Durango. So we are very much engaged in those discussions and committed to making sure that this community comes out better than before. It's hard to imagine, but that has always been the response of this governor, whether it's been fires or floods, and now we have this, that we come out better on the other side. And I think that the community will galvanize, and we want to make sure that our resources are available. And further to that, the governor wants to see the impact. He wants to see not only the impact on the natural resources, but on the community, and he will be here Tuesday morning. Mayor Brookie has graciously agreed to help with some of the logistics, and exactly what that will look like will be developed over the next 36 hours. But the governor looks forward to making sure he has a full and comprehensive understanding of what is occurring in this community, and looks forward to seeing you. So with that, I will turn it back over.
So Pat Dorsey, Colorado Parks and Wildlife.
Makes me kind of nervous passing my boss on the stairs. Hey, thank you first off, our friends and neighbors, for your concern about wildlife. I wanted to let you know that Colorado Parks and Wildlife got notification, was out in front of this plume with water testing. We wanted to protect our fish hatchery, which stocks a lot of the area lakes and rivers, and we wanted to assess what was going on in the Animas River. So some of you have heard about the fish cages that we had. We actually have 3 stations throughout town, one at 32nd Street, one behind our hatchery, and one further down at the High Bridge. We have a total of 108 sentinel fish in the river, and at this point in time we had 1 mortality very early on, and we've had no mortality since then. So what that means is we haven't seen any impacts to those fish from an acute exposure. However, CPW is in this for the long term. We want to know if there are going to be any impacts to the fish and the terrestrial wildlife as we progress through this incident. So with that, I want to thank you again for your support and your concern.
Thank you, Pat. So I'm going to announce the next 3, actually, because they're giving a presentation, and while I go up and get the mic off the stage, let them get set up. So we have Deborah McKeon here from EPA out of Denver. She's our PhD toxicologist. We also have Dan Wall, who is a PhD toxicologist as well. And Marcy Bidwell, she's with the Mountain Studies Institute. I've got lots of information to go over with you here. All right, there we go.
Is that better? As you were just told, I'm Deborah McKean. I'm with Region 8. I'm a toxicologist. Pardon me? A little bit, all right. However, I'm not the only toxicologist in Region 8. We have here tonight also Dr. Dan Wall, who is my co-worker and more than right-hand person here because we were...
I think people have multiple ways.
All right, how about that? Much better, okay. Thank you. What I was saying is that I have been very fortunate in that Dr. Dan Wall, who is also a toxicologist in our office, happened to be here doing another investigation along the Animas at the time that the release occurred. So Dan was able to lead the group of field people that were able to be deployed very, very quickly and get out in the field and start taking environmental samples. It's because of Dan's effort and the efforts of all of the workers that had helped him that we're able to have a lot of the data that I'm showing here tonight. The data that I'm going to show is not all of the data that we will have over the next few days, the next few weeks. It's the initial data that we've been able to collect, and we were very interested in getting that to you and communicating it to you as quickly as possible. So, as you know, the release occurred along the Cement Creek, north of Silverton. And we were able to collect some samples right along Cement Creek, like I said, right after the incident occurred, and then take a number of samples within the town of Silverton, and as the plume of contamination proceeded down the Animas. As you were told, our data is on the EPA website right now. But as you start to begin to look at that data, you'll notice that there are hundreds and hundreds of numbers being presented. What I'm going to try to do with Dan's help is try to put those numbers in perspective so that you're not only able to appreciate what the numbers mean for these initial sampling points that we evaluated over the first couple of days, but will also help you evaluate the data as it comes out. That does not mean this is the only time we're going to be here. We're going to be here for the duration, and whenever it's advisable for us to come down and continue this dialogue to help you understand what these data demonstrate, we're going to be here. So as I said, there are a lot of numbers that have been collected, and what we've done, the dots that you saw on the map represent the sampling locations. And we've sampled at a number of locations along the Animas and in Cement Creek and analyzed them for a number of different kinds of metals. They've been analyzed for about 24 different metals. Not only because of the historical mining that's gone on in this area, but also just because metals are often naturally occurring in water systems and in soils throughout the country, throughout the world. We need to be able to evaluate the metals that we see relative to what we know has occurred, not only historically, but also naturally. So what you'll see in some of the slides I have here are not only the data points that represent our sampling data at a number of locations, but you'll also see some numbers down here at the bottom of the slide. Not only are we fortunate that Dan happened to be here a few days before the incident, but also we're also very, very fortunate in that there have been a number of investigations along Cement Creek, the Animas, this whole area, not only by EPA, but by any number of stakeholders that have interest and an affection for not only the environment as a whole, but the Animas River in particular. And so what we've done to help us understand the levels that we've measured in the different sampling locations, we've taken some of the more recent data that has been collected prior to the release and summarized that, and we've done just an initial kind of a preliminary evaluation of all that data to give you a reference point of where approximately where the contaminant or the metal concentration started with, so that we can understand the contaminant concentrations. So as I said, we're only showing some of the data here, actually because of the very low levels of most of the metals. It's very difficult to actually represent on the graph because many of the concentrations are down here, far below 2,000. And so what we're going to see are just a few of the metals in these graphs. And just to make this discussion a little easier, I'm going to just concentrate on this blue line, zinc, and show you how that changes as a function of the location along the rivers and also the location relative to where the contaminant plume is at any one time. So this first data set that we're looking at here is on Cement Creek above Silverton, and we were able to take the first set of samples on the 5th in the morning, and that represents kind of after that big contamination plume started. Oh, okay, that might be 7 p.m., sorry. But anyway, after the cement, after the concentration, the contaminant plume started moving down Cement Creek, and it was actually passing that sampling location. So what we see here is an initial high concentration that represents the kind of the trailing edge of the plume, and then as the plume leaves, that concentration is going down to lower levels. Now let's compare that concentration. As you can see, it's ranging here between 4,000 and about 8,000, and we can compare it to those historical concentrations that I talked about before. So in this case, at this location, we have a concentration of about 1,200 micrograms per liter. And so the concentration in the tail unit of the plume in this location started out at 8,000. And by August 6th, it was down to a little over 4,000. Now let's look at some other examples of other locations. These graphs, and this axis, as you see, is a little different. It only goes up to 900. It doesn't go up as far as the other one did, up into the thousands. But this represents a location along the Animas River above where Cement Creek intersects with the Animas. So what you're seeing here is actually a relatively consistent level of zinc in this case, and here's manganese. And as you can see, the historical level of zinc at this location is only about 580. I shouldn't say only, I'll get to that in a second, but it's 580. And as you can see, during the sampling times between the 5th and the 6th, this was actually lower than the historical concentration. One of the things I need to say in reference to this slide and also to other slides is that although this particular monument we're talking about right now happens to be along Cement Creek, as many of you may recognize, and this was referred to a little bit earlier, there are a number of mines throughout this entire area. And there are many other sources north of Silverton that also have the potential to impact the Animas River. So we see variation just during a year and over time in these metals. And we can button sit here. The concentration had been 580 over a period of time, and now it was at that location even lower. So that actually also makes it difficult to interpret some of our data in as far as when does that concentration get to what we consider to be normal. Normal is a relative term and it would be difficult to define in this case. Now let's look at this map, and this one's very, very descriptive. This was the Animas just below Silverton. And as you can see, we were able to sample the river before that plume arrived. We have about a 6-hour period here of where the plume impacted this sampling location and proceeded down the river to where those concentrations of those same metals started to decrease significantly and start to level out. And again, if we look at zinc, that blue line, and we see that historical concentrations were at about 800. 800 is down here where we started, and as you can see, it's where we finished off on August 6th. Let's go a little further down the Animas to Baker's Bridge, just north of Durango. And again, the plume had not arrived at this location at this time. And again, if we concentrate on zinc here, you see that historical concentrations, it's about 94 micrograms per liter. And what we see is that's where it started out here on August 5th. And it continued there to the 6th. And it wasn't until later on the day of the 6th that the contaminant plumes started to approach this area. And here, these are lower numbers, so these seem high, but actually they're actually lower concentrations. But here is the 32nd bridge, even further down, and you can see that the plume has not arrived at this location at the time these sampling events occurred. There is no historical data at this particular location. We apologize for that, but the concentration here is pretty consistent. It's on the low side, it's 40 micrograms per liter, and it's stayed consistent over these 2 days. We are expecting, as you've heard, to see now the sampling data from this location down close into Durango and beyond, and we will expect to see these same type of profiles as the week has progressed. And what we're hoping is that in these other locations north of Durango, that we're going to see those concentrations level off. And again, this is specific for the water. It does involve the sediment. We're starting to sample the sediment too. And we'll try to get a handle on where that concentration is. I'm not sure if we're taking questions right now, but if you just hold on to that, we'll get to you in just a minute. Now, the big question is, what does all this mean? What do these numbers mean? And do the increases in concentration and then followed by the decreases mean anything? Does it mean anything relative to human health? Does it mean anything relative to the environment? I told you before that one of the factors that we're looking at to be able to get a handle on that question, what does this mean, is a comparison to those historical values. But we have other mechanisms, other risk-based or health-based mechanisms to evaluate what it means and whether the contaminant plume might have caused some problems, or if it was transient enough that it may have had a short-term impact, but then long-term it doesn't have an impact. And those are the kinds of questions we're trying to answer. This is an example of a few of the ways we're trying to do that. And this involves some of our ecological assessments. And what we do is take a number of different kinds of ecological endpoints and look at the concentrations in different locations. Again, these are, across the board, these are the different sampling locations that I showed you before. And we've evaluated each of those concentrations relative to some target. And it's a concentration target. And that target represents some kind of effect or no effect level for some particular endpoint. If you create a ratio, if you divide the concentration environment compared to the concentration associated with that target, if you have a value that's greater than 1, that means the concentration was higher for that target, and you get something called a hazard quotient that is over 1. If your environmental concentration is lower than that target, you end up with a ratio that is lower than 1, like down here, like 0 or 0.1. So what we've seen is, remember where we saw the data at that A72, just below Silverton, and it had that high peak. That concentration level was compared to the different kinds of endpoints, and that we've seen that in some cases, we have indicators that there's a potential for some adverse health effect or some adverse outcome, where just before there wasn't an adverse outcome and afterwards it leveled down, and that mirrors the concentration. So again, as we continue to do other kinds of analyses, this is just one, and this gives you an indication of how that initial effect, that initial concentration may have had an effect initially. We're going to monitor and do other kinds of assessments. So what are we planning on doing? How are we going to evaluate the water here? Well, on the human health side, we're going to look at the use of that surface water as a source for recreation. So we've, with with a collaboration of not only the risk assessors in Region 8, but also risk assessors in Region 6 in Dallas and Region 9 in California, where we've created some risk-based screening levels that reflect exposures that are recreational within the river area. And just as I showed you, just with those hazard quotients, we're going to compare the different concentrations to those screening levels. If they're over the screening level, that'll imply some potential problem. If the ratio is under that screening level, less of a potential for some adverse health effect. You heard that we feel that there's a potential for some impact for groundwater and for those drinking water wells. EPA has regulatory values called maximum contaminant levels. They're also called MCLs. And there's specific values associated with different contaminants and different metals, like the ones we're analyzing here. And those MCLs represent a concentration in drinking water that if you drink it for an entire lifetime, it is not associated with any adverse health effect. So even though that contamination indeed may be short-lived, those drinking water samples will be compared to MCLs to ensure that the drinking water is, doesn't have the potential to cause adverse health effects. Aquatic life, take this down, or do you let Stan Stakiko talks about this?
Hi. Thanks, Deb. As Deb mentioned, we will be comparing the results that start to come in over the next few days and hours, probably, to a variety of different benchmarks. And in particular, for aquatic life, we will be comparing results to the Colorado Table Value Standards, the water quality standards for the state. Down in the Southern Ute Reservation, they prefer to use tribal or EPA federal standards. So those results from down farther will be compared to those numbers to assess the potential harm to aquatic life. The sediments will be compared to, these are literature values, non-regulatory values. Colloquially, we call them consensus sediment quality guidelines. These were published in peer-reviewed literature, and it's something we typically use to assess the potential effects of contaminants in the sediments. We also look to other sources of information, in particular some of the studies that Mountain States Mountain Studies Institute is doing 3 times today. And Colorado Parks and Wildlife results from their cage fish studies, they survey the fish populations. We will try to integrate these different lines of evidence to really come up with a bigger picture of what the potential problems are for the aquatic life. We have a draft sampling plan that we reviewed this afternoon, should be finalized today. We've incorporated comments from a number of stakeholders and entities. Some of the highlights of the plan, or what we plan to do in the near future, and actually much of this we've already started a couple days ago before the plan was even written. As mentioned before, we are prioritizing analysis of drinking water and potential contamination in groundwater wells. Particularly, the priority is the alluvial wells near the river in the upper Animas Valley in general. We also will be sampling water in the river, are sampling water in the river, grab samples, installing, Mountain Studies Institute has got some longer-term monitoring auto samplers. They collect samples every 6 hours, I believe. Those have been in place for a while. We are working with USGS to get some even longer-term, high-resolution auto samplers in place at some strategic locations along the Animas River. We will also have started sampling sediment along the rivers, and we'll be moving into irrigation ditches, prioritizing requests from citizens that need, or for reasons, whatever reasons, could not shut their irrigation ditches in time. We also, in conjunction with some of our partners, will be collecting biological information along the river to assess the potential impacts to biota. Now I'd like to introduce Marcy from the Mountain Studies Institute.
Thank you very much. Let me take 1 second to switch slides here. So I am the Executive Director of Mountain Studies Institute, and I am here to represent the work that has been done through a variety of partners and the staff that we have here in Durango and in Silverton. We are an independent, nonprofit research and education mountain center that is based on helping our communities to develop the science that they need to understand the issues of today and to put that science into action, such as adding to decision-making processes like this one. And we have been participating as partners in the Animas Watershed Partnership, the Animas River Stakeholders Group, and the San Juan Watershed Group, which is a group down in New Mexico. As soon as we heard about the incident in Silverton, of course, we do what all scientists do when emergencies happen. Sheriffs run out and start organizing people, and scientists grab bottles and stick them in the river. And so that's exactly what we did as just our first response. We designed a sampling plan, very quick and very simple, but that would give us some very baseline data as we move forward, as the plume was moving towards us in our community. Our concerns were definitely what was in the water column in chemistry, and then also the aquatic life and the sediment. And so I've also asked Scott Roberts, who is our aquatic biologist, to join me here today to just kind of share with you some very basic and very initial information. We've been working both independently as well as collaborating with this incident team so that we can add the data that we have collected to the rest of the story. We were located very close to Rotary Park when we heard the news of the incident, so Aaron Kemple and Scott Roberts decided to establish a new monitoring point right there at the park because it was easy for us to access, and we were able to maintain that site long term. We also looked at sites where we had long-term data through the work of partnerships, and that included 32nd Street Bridge, where macroinvertebrates have been monitored in the past, also with the help of Trout Unlimited and those other partners. And so that was kind of our simple three-string strategy, was to grab water quality and to monitor macroinvertebrates. We also see, I said three strings. Sediment was our other concern, but that's something that we didn't have the resources at the time to do, and it's still a concern we see going long-term in the future. We began monitoring at 10 a.m. on Thursday. We had all of our staff that were Silverton-based were in the field, and so we weren't able to start monitoring there as much as we like. We know there's a lot of effort going on in that area. But since this is for Durango, largely we have the data to show for down here. The graph that you see in front of you shows the pH that we took off of the water quality samples that we took. We started monitoring at Rotary Park around 10 a.m. and we monitored until we saw the plume arrive, which got to the Rotary Bridge about 10:30 at night, when you could see a discoloration if you're standing there with your headlamps, kind of like geeks like we are. We noticed the color intensified until we ran out of bottles at 12:30, and that was our last sampling point that night. We took a break, got a little sleep, came back at it at 10 a.m. the next morning. pH is a really rough measure. It's a vital sign for what's going on in the water column. Durango Animas River section usually benefits from fairly clean water. An average pH when we started about 7.8. And you can see that even though we missed what might have been the full depth of the plume, we did notice that by 10 a.m. we were back into that above 7 range, and that by Sunday at 6 a.m. we seem to have stabilized in that area. Obviously, there's a lot more that's important about chemistry that's related to metals, and some of that information will be in the EPA's water quality data and our water quality data. We have submitted that for sampling, but just like everyone else, it takes time. So with that, though, we have at least this one indicator for what was going on in Durango when the plume hit and then when it moved on and through. There are sediments that are in soil and for us that are in the stream bank, and that's a longer term issue, and Scott can give us an introduction to that with his macroinvertebrates.
Hello, I'm Scott Roberts, aquatic ecologist with the Mountain Studies Institute. So I'm just going to talk for just a couple of minutes about macroinvertebrates. We're talking about benthic macroinvertebrates, and I know many of you fish, so you probably know exactly what we're talking about. The important thing about benthic macroinvertebrates and why they're an important piece of evidence for us is that they're benthic, meaning they live on the bottom of the river. So not only are they exposed to the water column and the water chemistry of that water column, but they're also exposed to the sediment that they live in on the bottom of the river. So they're excellent indicators of changing environmental conditions, as changing water chemistry as well as changing a physical habitat that they live in. So we immediately went down to Rotary Park, as Marcy indicated, and started sampling for benthic macroinvertebrates to get a sense of that community there at that location that we could compare later observations to after the plume arrived. We also were able to run up to 32nd Street, where I've been sampling for a couple of years, and we have historical benthic macroinvertebrate samples for 20 plus years, so that we could also catch that community before the plume arrived, and to be able to monitor how it changed over time. So that was on Thursday the 6th, before the plume arrived, and then Friday I was able to go back the next day. That's about 20 hours after the plume arrived. Hello, good. So the benthic macroinvertebrates would have been exposed to the plume for about 20 hours at that time. And I was able to take follow-up samples there. We're going to take follow-up samples in a few days at about 72 and even 96 hours of exposure. We're going to wait a few weeks, check on those communities again, and this is going to be a long-term effort. We're going to see both whether or not acute, short-term changes in the community occurred, whether bugs immediately died or not. We're also going to be able to track that long-term to see how those bugs respond to chronic exposure to the plume. What we do, I can share some anecdotal data of just kind of going out there and taking samples. What we'll do is actually preserve the bugs in alcohol, look at them very closely under a scope to really tell all that we would like to know about the benthic community. But anecdotally, I can tell you that at 20 hours of exposure and also at about 60 hours of exposure, most of the dominant taxa that you see in the Animas River that we're used to seeing were still alive. So that's a piece of good news that baby mayflies, hydrocycid was still alive, black flies. I know there's a detail some of you don't care about, but the bottom line is that many of the insects survived that first plume. That is good news. Caution though, because we could see some different results from more chronic long-term monitoring of those bugs. And with that, I'll let Marcy.
So as I mentioned, this was just our first immediate response. We're invested in this in the long haul because our two communities, Silverton and Durango, mean a lot to us, just as they do to all of you. So we'll continue to participate and contribute as we can. Thank you very much.
Well, that summarizes the sampling and analysis data that we have to date. We are hoping that the next phase of sampling that's further down on the Animas, closer here to Durango, will be available in another day or two. We'll be again summarizing those data on our website relative to the data that you've seen today, and we're hoping to be able to use that to inform some of the decision making that you're very, very interested in. So,
okay, thank you. Just a second. Mayor, you wanted to make a few more comments? Tim?
Thank you. I don't want to belabor this information. It's hard to follow Marcy Bidwell and all those facts. And when we return to gold medal fishing waters, we know exactly who to call to find out what bugs are the good ones. At any rate, I just want to make one fundamental public service announcement, which is you heard a lot of talk about bottled water delivery. You heard a lot of talk about the trucking to farmers and ranchers in the county. That is the county. I'm the mayor of Durango. I'm here to assure you that your drinking water, if you pay a bill, i.e. to the city of Durango, your water never has been and never will be contaminated. It is safe to drink out of the tap today, tomorrow, and forever. we were able to, like many people on this panel, get ahead of the curve. Our utility department immediately shut off the pumps to pump water out of the Animas River. As many of you know, most of our water, drinking water, comes out of the Florida River, but in the summertime, we treat about 4 times as much more water to put on our lawns, wash our cars, whatever we do in the summertime. And so we put out a call, an urgent call, for the City of Durango citizens to conserve water. That resulted in about a 75% reduction for the past 6 days in our water consumption in the City of Durango. Amazing. Amazing turnout. Appreciate your efforts in that. It's maybe something we can consider in the future. So with that, we were able to mathematically, I won't put any numbers to this equation because you've heard enough already, refill and are in the capacity now where we feel comfortable that our city reservoir is full enough to serve the capacity and the needs of the City of Durango at our current rates, easing into through this event. With that, it has given us acute information that, our treatment facilities, we have one treatment facility. It's a number of years old. We have on our long-term game plan a second treatment facility, water treatment facility, that'll pump water out of Night Horse Reservoir. And so it points out the critical need for redundancy in our water supply. So we'll be working with the state and with the federal government in terms of trying to bring that to fruition. And that may be one of the silver linings of this whole event. I'd like to just reiterate, if you're in the City of Durango, you're okay to turn on your tap and drink that water. Thanks.
So we're going to begin the part of the question and answer portion, and I'll, so we have to start mobilizing out of the building right around 8 o'clock. We'll try to push it a little bit. And then for media, what we'll end up doing is meeting outside for any questions. So I do ask that, so everybody gets an opportunity to ask a question, that you limit it to one question. If we can go back around or have time to go back around, loop back around in the line and do that, but please try to provide everybody with that opportunity to ask the questions. So with that, let me put this on the mic here, and if you want to come up. Please state your name, who you are, so we can have that information. Also, there's a sign-in sheet, I believe, that should be going around. If you haven't seen it, please let me know, or if you could make sure you sign into it, that would be great.
Hello, I too am a social scientist working in this area for the past 15 years, funded by DOJ and NIH. I understand these data. I know for certain my research participants would not understand the dangerousness and toxicity of this situation. I would suggest that further communications with the public be made on a pedestrian level so that it is understandable for everybody to understand. I've made preliminary data sampling that suggests that there are many community members and groups who do not understand the dangerousness of this situation.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Susan. I have a question regarding ditch water. We live north of Trimble, and unfortunately that section of the ditch was contaminated, and there's quite a bit of sediment on the sides and bottom and on the plants that dangle into the water. I'm hoping that we're going to be informed when that it's being tested and when it's going to be safe. I know in the spring they bring large equipment through and remove that sediment, which frequently is sold as topsoil. So what is going to happen with that sediment? Will that be considered toxic waste when that's cleaned out in the spring? And how will that be treated?
list all concerns that I have.
So, my name is Martin S. Mark. I'm with EPA. What we're going to do is ask that you contact the coordination office in the county building. And Craig Myers, could you raise your hand so that she knows to contact you? And we will come out and sample your irrigation ditch and figure out what to do with it. And until we know what it is, we're not going to know what to do with it just yet. But we'll turn those sample results around, work with you to deal with that over the short and long term.
Thank you. So over here.
Hello, my name is Becky Clausen. I have a PhD in sociology. In particular, my area of expertise is environmental sociology. And I got interested in how communities respond to man-made disasters from living in Cordova, Alaska, which was ground zero for the Exxon Valdez oil spill. So there's about 20 or 25 years of data that explores how communities respond. Natural disasters, earthquakes, hurricanes, usually brings communities together. Man-made disasters, we usually see divisiveness, blame, guilt, arguing. So I just want to think really preventatively and intentionally about this, because I think there is that potential here, and there is a huge peer-reviewed literature of what communities can do, listening circles, making sure that we're not only receiving information from the top down, but that everybody's voice has a chance to be heard. And of course, public health and economics are the first we think about, but the psychological, social, spiritual impacts really need to be, there needs to be platforms for those voices to be heard. So I just want to make a note of that. We are so appreciative for all the work the natural scientists are doing, but hopefully from this huge research program of how can you respond to natural disasters, man-made disasters, we can set up things in place to try and keep Durango whole. One example of that is the youth. I think it's really important that we've said, tell the kids not to go in the river. But we also need to help inform parents. That's psychologically and socially scary for kids. And so I want us to think about addressing the youth and what we can do for them. My daughter's made a nest for any injured animal she wants to give to someone. Who could use it?
I vote for Leanne.
Okay. And I'm available as a resource in the community if you all want help setting up this kind of a nest for injured animals. Something kids like to do is to help.
Yes, my name is Daniel Silva. I'm a fisherman and I've lived in this area for 37 years. I would just like to say this is the biggest terrorist act to this river ever done by the EPA or by anybody. I work in the oil and gas industry. We take preventative measures to prevent something like this when we are working near rivers, creeks, lakes, etc. The EPA requires us to do certain things to prevent that. Why wasn't it prevented here? And will there be action taken against the supervisor, project manager of that project?
So, first off, I want to be clear that this was not intentional, obviously. The EPA was out doing this work, in fact, to try to address what is an ongoing problem that we have beyond this mine. There are others. This is a historic mining district that has discharged acid mine drainage for decades. And in terms of why it happened, we are doing a complete look back at that to understand it, because we're not in the business of creating these kinds of messes. EPA is in the business of cleaning up these things. So believe me, we're in a position that we're not used to being in. But I am trying to understand what happened. We are trying to understand what happened so we can prevent it in the future. But the suggestion of terrorism is really not appropriate. And we're going to continue continue to work until this is cleaned up and hold ourselves to the same standards that we would anyone that would have created this situation.
I don't want to go until...
Go ahead, no.
Well, my name is Mary Oswald, and I'd like to just make an observation to the community about something that was kind of buried in the Durango Herald a couple of months ago. Our closest oversight for this kind of stuff was the State Division of Mineland Safety and Reclamation, and about a month ago that office, Mike King, who spoke quite passionately of the concern of the governor and the state of Colorado and the Department of Natural Resources, a month ago they closed the office down here that's been our closest boots to the ground to making sure this kind of thing doesn't happen with active mines. And that office was responsible for nipping in the bud the cyanide leaching that was going on in Mancus with an illegal gold mine and preventing something like this from happening. And that office that has been our oversight for 20 years down here is now closed as of a month ago. And I think the city needs to know that. Thank you.
Well, my name is Richard Ruth. I'm a retired attorney with some environmental law experience. I certainly don't want to represent myself as an expert in that field. But as Mr. McGrath said, the problem is a historical one of the mines north of Silverton consistently discharging toxic polluted water into the Animas basin, tributaries that drain into the Animas. And as I understand this particular incident, this catastrophe, it was the EPA was trying to dam up the discharge from one of the mines, and accidentally the dam failed. Anybody that's ever worked in construction can understand that. But my concern is ongoing about the continual discharge from these mines above Silverton and what it's doing to our river after this calamity is passed and taken care of. I have been familiar with Superfund matters before, and I'm just wondering if a Superfund designation might not be appropriate for this area with these mines above Silverton, and if not, why not?
So thank you, and this is actually a point that Commissioner Blackwell made as well. What are the long-term plans in terms of the broader mine drainage? And you're right. I mean, this has been going on for decades. We are working with the county up and with the city or the town of Silverton, with the mine owners, to have this conversation. What Superfund is a federal statute that does provide tools to do this kind of cleanup. It's one that we need to administer in partnership with the state and with the local governments. So this is a conversation we've been having ongoing, whether it's actually listed on the national priorities list. That's certainly one mechanism, but not the only one available to us under Superfund. But we are having these ongoing conversations, and I am hopeful that the tragedy of this is what we're all experiencing now, but I'm hopeful that we can appreciate what the threat that these ongoing historic mines present, and that we can be more engaged in getting to the cleanup of these mines.
So over here.
My name is Dr. Kevin Lombard. I'm with San Juan College and New Mexico State University Agricultural Science Center at Farmington. I'm also an irrigator off the lower Animas ditch. I have 4 acres with my wife. We grow vegetables and cut flowers. I'm trying to keep my emotions and my scientific
components separated in my mind right now. But like my colleagues here from the Mountain Institute, the first thing I did was I got off a plane at midnight from New Orleans and I grabbed water bottle sampling kits and I started sampling from Cedar Hill down to Flora Vista and stopping in Aztec ruins. And what I'm observing is that we have some baseline water samples. We're not trying to subjugate any official EPA samples. We just want to try to get some pilot data. But what I'm particularly concerned about is the sediment. So upon observations today, I noticed that there are invertebrates and there are small fish fries in calm areas down in Cedar Hill. But when you just disturb the sediment, we have that orange iron oxide sludge kind of being kicked up. What's in that concerns me. I'm appreciating the folks that are doing these round-the-clock testing. So I'd like to propose that we definitely focus on some sampling of the sediment. That's what we're going to be doing down in, hopefully more of it down in the San Juan County. We have an ICP facility at San Juan College, and we're going to try to get some, I'm not speaking for San Juan College right now, but I think we can mobilize some efforts there. My also concern, though, is that when the river kind of slows down in San Juan County and it enters the Navajo Nation, this is where I think we're going to see a lot of settling. And my question is, another question I have is, I'm sorry, if we're deploying flocculants and calcium, we're trying to raise the pH to settle these heavy metals out of solution. Is there anything being done to even pick hay bales in the river with some sorbing material to try to capture this plume before it reaches Lake Powell? I also, I'm adding a lot, but I want to see more street level data presented, like the former presenter here mentioned. I think our general public really needs that. They need it to be distilled down into something that's easy to understand at an 8th grade level.
Okay, sir, I do want to make sure we have enough time for everybody. So I understood you had a question about soils.
Sediment sampling and what is being done to put any kind of remediation effort in place before the plume, if it hasn't already made it to Lake Powell.
Okay.
Like what can be done to intercept it, because it came through yesterday.
Okay. Okay.
So on sediment, as I mentioned, we did take some graph samples today. And that's something we're going to continue to be doing. We're also we'll be developing a comprehensive strategy for that sediment testing, and that's something that we'll be communicating with folks here to help put that together. That's a longer-term ongoing project that we'll be doing as a result of this. In terms of the plume itself, as I also mentioned earlier, the Bureau of Reclamation did do the release from Navajo Reservoir, and that seems to have been helpful to some extent. We can take the suggestion of flocculants. That hasn't been something that we have discussed at this point.
Just before, I just want to say that I also have some concerns about flushing this further down. If there's technologies available, which I think there are, that we can put in the river now to absorb these chemicals and slow the plume down, I'm not exactly convinced that maybe flushing might be a good idea.
Thank you.
I would also just like to add in response, I forgot to mention, Mountain Studies Institute has a website, mountainstudies.org. We also can be found on Facebook, and we're using our social media and our website to be able to share information and posts and connect our other partners south of the border in New Mexico as well, and so please check that out. We have videos and talks from experts from past conferences that we posted on San Juan Mining and Reclamation that you can find there.
Thanks, Marcy. Next.
Hi, my name is Alex Sinkle. This question's kind of directed at Sean McGrath. So I feel like this whole time I've sat and I've heard a lot about monitoring sampling, and maybe a little bit of release from water. What I haven't heard is much on the idea of what the cleanup plan is, what we're supposed to do with all this crap once we're left with it. Like you mentioned earlier a minute ago about keeping stuff away. So, I don't know, is the solution to this pollution dilution or what?
Right. So the immediate focus right here is on the plume that's going through the river and making sure that we're protecting public health and the environment, and that's really the drinking water issues that we've discussed, the well water, you know, it's the watering of cattle. But you're right, the issue that we will turn to and are beginning to turn to is the longer term response to this. And as I've said and acknowledged, there are longer term implications of this. Having the more accurate, or what we think will be much more accurate information about the release itself, the 3 million gallons, will help us in the modeling of that. But this is going to be ongoing work that we will need to do, and we will be doing it with our partners.
What's the work? So, I'm sorry, can we go on over here?
The work is the long-term cleanup of the sediment that's in the river.
Until we have a better understanding of where the contamination is in its magnitude and its impact along the river, we can't really evaluate the most appropriate actions to take.
So we got a lot of folks that have been waiting over here for a while, so I'd like to give that opportunity over here.
My name is Wes Oswald, and I just wanted to share something that I saw today that was a little bit concerning. I think this will be an engagement for Sean Smith. I think you're the one who's in control of shutting down the river. I was at Santa Rita today, and I just went down to look at the river and kind of see how it was doing today. And I saw that you had your one little sign there. I believe these are your old campaign signs. And so there's one little campaign or old campaign sign saying enter the river. Speak up?
Yes.
Okay. So I saw one sign there. That's the only one that I saw there at Santa Rita. And right next to it was a sign that said River Access, and it had a arrow pointing down towards the river. And it was much brighter and much bigger than your sign. And as I was sitting at the river watching, I saw a young couple come down and actually go down a little bit further from me and wade into the water. And so I quickly went over and informed them that the river was contaminated, and they didn't seem to know. And as my back was turned, another family of about 7 people behind me were also going down right by the sign to wade into the river. And they had a little 3-year-old girl who was about to get into the river before I informed them that it was contaminated. So I'm wondering if there's, especially maybe at places like Santa Rita, where you have a children's park, if maybe caution yellow tape or something can be done that would prevent that, because it doesn't seem like it's all that apparent to people that they should not be in the water.
Excuse me, I very much appreciate your comments. I will tell you, we ran into a little problem. The original signs that we put up, we did a ton of 8.5 by 11s. The city of Durango helped us with that, and our folks did. We have in our county over 50 miles of river frontage and many different access points. On Friday evening at 2 minutes to 5 o'clock, I was able to get in touch with Fast Signs. I called 2 other printers who did not have an ability to help us at all. And that's where the repurposing of the signs came from. So that's what we were able to get done on Friday at 5 p.m. I take these words to heart. I've had additional staff working every day. The city of Durango has had the river rangers and the city of Durango police, but we can't be everywhere all the time.
I understand that, and I called your non-emergency hotline, and I asked for a sheriff to come down, and I waited about 15 minutes. Nobody came down. I had to recall again. They said, we just sent somebody there, and I said, no, you didn't. And then they finally sent 3 more, and I asked if maybe you had some yellow tape or something that you could do about that. I drove right away back here, and still nothing had been done when people were going.
We appreciate the feedback. I appreciate the feedback.
Did you just give me the time to answer that?
This was about 2:30 in the afternoon.
Today. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good evening. My name is Noah Flu, and I'm also a social scientist at the University of Colorado. And I would like to give feedback to the data presentation. I think it was difficult to extract meaning out of the graphs. since the variables, particularly location and time, were not clear. I also have questions, and I hope maybe this will come forth later, about the comparison. The before and after, or benchmarks and now, would be very useful for us in the community. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments.
So I do want to, I'm just looking at the numbers and the time that we have available. So the folks that are up in line now are the end of the line. So if we could go over here. And please try to focus towards your questions. That would be helpful in kind of moving things. We might have a little bit more time, but go ahead.
My name is Cheryl Schlabach. I'm a realtor in Durango, a resident of 37 years here. I think I reflect my feelings of so many in the audience of how concerned we are and how the Animas River is our lifeline. I applaud everything I've heard here of what everybody is doing now, and it's typical when you have a disaster that people jump on the bandwagon and they become accountable. What concerns me is that the mines have been closed for many, many years, as you said, decades, and it's been the attention of the EPA, which, by the way, I can't remember, is that Environmental Pollution Agency? Anyway, I do have concerns of your accountability, and I would like to see what's been done through the years and why this has been allowed to exist in such a threatening way to our community. Would you like to address that now? Or?
In terms of the cleanups of abandoned mines?
Yes.
The
pollution that comes from the abandoned mines that have been abandoned for decades.
Right. This is something we have been working on for years, but it does take partnership with the state and the local government, and it takes certain designations. But Martin is our expert on Superfund, and we turned it to him.
So we've also been working with local stakeholders up in the mining district for at least 17 years, funding efforts to deal with waste piles and mining waste up in the basin. And we have been involved on the Animas River for 17 years. We're utilizing authorities now that don't require national priority listing, but I think that conversation at some point in the future here will have to be revisited with all of the people that have something at stake up in the basin and down here. We are presently still working up in the river and in the district to evaluate sources of contamination into the Animas River. We are getting closer to being able to understand the very specific sources that are affecting the river right now, and we're also working to plug the Red and Bonita adit up on Cement Creek, which was about 600 feet below where the gold canyon. So we're active up there. We're also working down here to address the issues that have been caused as a result of the release from the gold canyon.
My name is David Mulder. I own one of those rafting companies, Durango River Trippers, and do Jeep rentals as well. I leave here today with a piece of paper, a form I can fill out for economic impact. I have over 23 employees that are either here tonight or listening from home. The question really becomes is, when can we be open again? And all I hear is a handful of gonna do's and the PowerPoint slide that, no disrespect to this elementary school building we're in, it seemed as if it was not put together that well. What should I tell my employees?
So we are, first off, acknowledge your frustration, and it's very legitimate. It's having an impact on your life and your employees' lives. We acknowledge that. To be able to reopen the river, we need to be certain, as the sheriff said earlier, that we're at levels in the river that are safe. And the data that we presented tonight, I apologize that you're not finding it entirely useful or informative. We will work on that, but the point is we are encouraged that there's a downward trajectory, but it's going to take more sampling to come in to confirm that trajectory is continuing, and it's going to take some consultation between us to make that final determination of when it's safe. So we don't have a definite date of when that's happened, but we are driven by the urgency that I hear in your question.
And lastly, ironically enough, your office called my office today during River Trippers to rent out Jeeps. And although I appreciate the business, my answer is no. They are reserved for tourists. Thank you.
I'm Jeff Scott. I'm a former city commissioner from Aztec. When Lake Emma bottomed out and stormed through the mine many years ago, I think it was in the 70s, Colorado EPA never notified New Mexico about the discharge. The ditches were all left on down there. The city of Aztec was continuing to pump water into their reservoir. This one, New Mexico heard about this spill from the Southern Ute tribe. Thank you, Southern Utes. Because it definitely worked out. I wish to point out that we are a region here in the Four Corners region. We have 3 regional offices governing the Four Corners region. And they apparently, from past history, good experience, seem to not communicate with each other. The meeting here tonight stops at the state line. What is happening in New Mexico? What are they doing down there? We need either Congress or someone to get our region under one EPA office, or have sub-offices or something dealing with this. Whether it takes Congress or EPA or where that comes from, it's in dire need. Rather than continue with a couple other things that I had here, I see representatives from the Navajo Nation have come, and I'd really like to hear from them tonight if we could extend the time somehow.
So I do want to allow for time. It's the school that wants us out by 8:30.
We're taxpayers, not
okay.
Navajo Nation must speak.
By the school districts, or the folks that got the building for us, that we had to be out by 8:30. So I'm just trying to make it so we can.
Libby, do we have a representative from Navajo Nation that would like to come up and speak?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Thank you for the opportunity to address the concerned citizens, all of us, all the way from Silverton. We stood in the mouth of the line, so to speak, a while ago, looked right into where the water came out, and all the way, and tracked it all the way down through to this point, and then now it's, and we're continually tracking this all the way through our land down to Lake Powell. This is a huge disaster for us. I mean, the river is life for any one of us, all of us. It's our lifeline. It's who we are. It breathes. It provides. It gives us things that we need. It nourishes us. It defines us, especially those of us that live in the region. And the warnings were already there. They were in place. They were being put out there that this was going to happen. And if you read some of those reports that came out, just recently, it's as if they were there after the fact. I mean, they described exactly step by step what was going to happen. And no one paid attention. No one recognized. It was spelled out. And when I read that, just coming down the mountain, that someone said, this is exactly what's going to happen step by step, and everything that person described took place. And so the warnings were there, but no one did anything. No one addressed it. See, that's the thing about, I just heard the communication, is that we're talking to Region 6, we're talking to Region 9, Region 6 will say one thing, Region 9 will say something else. So there's no clear communication anywhere. And so you just have to continue to work with all the regions and try to get try to follow the ones that are giving you the best room for maneuver, to look at things, to gather information, to gather data. One of the first things we said from the get-go is, tell us what's in the water. Tell us what's in the water. We know it's more than zinc. We know it's more than lead. We know it's just not those two. There's more in the water. Tell us right now. You know, we spend millions and millions of dollars for these labs, and we have thousands of people out there working for EPA, and they can't come up with an answer within days. So we're still waiting for that should have happened the day after. That should have happened the day after, and we've been waiting because we don't know what to tell our people. Our people have horses, they have cattle, they have sheep, and we drink the water, and not knowing what's in the water has really been hampering us, so we don't know what to do. Our people down the river, I mean, they gathered they pinned up their cattle, they pinned up their horses and their sheep, and all of our irrigation waters are all dried up now, and we're in the middle of harvest. And let me tell you, it is devastating to us. It is hurting our economy right now, and there's no water, there's no hay. No one is right now meeting the immediate needs of the people. We're told, well, we got to do an assessment first. We've got to do the testing first, but there's a need there. The cattle are not getting water, the horses are not getting water, the drinking water has all stopped, so that need needs to be met immediately today. That needs to start. Our livestock cannot do without those necessities. And so yeah, the assessments need to be done, testing, yeah, that need to be done, but the need is right now. Cattle cannot go without water. They cannot wait for the assessment to come in. They need water today. The day after, they needed it right now. The irrigation, our crops, our corn, our hay, all of those, they need water right now. And so what are we going to do about it? See, that's the thing, is that who caused the devastation? And that company, that arm of the federal government, they need to address this and take immediate steps. Forget about the bureaucracy. Forget about jumping through the hoops and the red tapes and all of that. Just sweep that aside and meet the basic need of the people. That's what we're asking. That's what and the biggest thing we want, just be up front with us. That's it. That's what we want. We want full disclosure. We want full disclosure. And my Attorney General is here today with us, traveling with us. We have a couple of other attorneys with us. We're putting a legal team together. Let me tell you, what happened will not be swept under the rug. What happened will not be swept under the rug. Somebody's going to have to man up. Let me tell you, that has to take place. And that's what we are going to be doing. That's what we're going to pursue. So I just want to let you know that as a Navajo Nation, that's what we are pursuing. And that's what we got to do. Because sometimes agencies, the only thing they understand is that when actions like this are taken, that's when they start scrambling around. Because they protect their pockets, they protect their dollars, and so we don't want EPA to be protecting information that we need. That's all we're asking. Give us the information. And all the thing that has happened and the suffering that our people are starting. We had last night's meeting down in Shipra. We had people crying, saying, I took over my dad's farm, I took over my grandpa's farm, now the irrigation has stopped. The thing about is this, is that the sediments are in the water. Now I was just standing up there in the bridge in Silverton, and I thought I was putting my foot on solid ground, and it was mud, and half my shoes is yellow right now. And the water that's coming down is all yellow. It's like orange juice. And we were just watching the videos again. The water that's coming down, because we were told that the water up there is clear, and it's clearing up, and it's looking great. But you stand up there today, I stood up there just about 4 to 5 minutes ago, and that water is still like orange juice. It's still yellow. Hasn't changed yet. And let me tell you the thing that in a very simple way is that we were told, well, there's not a lot of crazy stuff, bad stuff in there for people. It's like maybe acid in a cup of coffee. And so, well, if it is, then I want to see somebody go out there and get a cup of that and drink it. Let's see what happens. In a very simple, practical way. So what I'm saying is this, just be up front, put everything on the table, tell us what is in there, don't hide things from us. And just man up and right the wrong that's taking place right now. Hurting our agriculture, our livestock, the fish life, vegetation, all of that is being impacted today in a negative way. And so today we're with you. I mean, I was just here earlier about 2-3 hours ago along the river. People are out there sitting, just staring into the water. I don't know if you've done that yourself, but I've met people along the river just walking up and down here in Durango. Saw people just staring into the water saying, what do we do? What can I do? One person said, I don't know what to do. I want to do something, but I don't know what to do. I'm just staring into the water. It seems like there's nothing I can do except sit here and feel the pain that is in my life right now. Because this person said, I've lived here most of my life in Durango, and I'm feeling hurt. My heart is hurting. My soul is hurting just looking into the river. So look at the residue. Look at the places where the contaminants and all of these are gathered. That's what he was saying. So I just want to say that to you. And so we are addressing it. We will be aggressive in putting EPA, making sure that, as I say, putting their feet to the fire. Yeah. That's what I want to do. That's what we're going to do.
Thank you, President Otto. Everyone here, we share the frustration. We were there, saw the river, and as I was telling the Attorney General, I felt like crying. I saw the water, and the water in our region is very important. It doesn't matter if you're a Navajo, if you're a Hispanic, if it's Anglo, we are all a part of this whole river basin. And now we are looking at EPA for many of the answers. There's frustration out there, we understand, we recognize that. But we want to let you all know we share that frustration as well. And we do want to get to the bottom of this. They're saying that, oh, this is kind of temporary. And then I also hear that these are decades of cleanup that has to happen. And who's going to clean it up? That's another thing that we haven't heard yet. The mediation plan. We need to know how these rivers are going to be cleaned up all the way from that mine all the way to Lake Powell, Arizona, because it's going to all be affected. And guess what I heard? I heard another thing too today, that there's other mines that are in a similar situation out in the mountains. So how do we address that? There's a larger environmental concern for all of us. And we just want to be with you. I know that there's a sense of hopelessness, but I know that a lot of people out there, including yourselves, I'm sure, are praying. And sometimes that's the only thing that we can do is pray to our Creator. Amen. And let Him know that we are in dire need of some assistance, some divine help. Amen. And so let's continue to pray
for our region. It doesn't matter if we're Navajo, Ute, Anglo, Hispanic, we're all in this together. And so that's why we come here to you today to let you know we're united on this, and we're wanting to hold whoever's responsible accountable for their actions to the fullest extent. And so I know a lot of you are wanting some answers, and that's why we're wanting to pursue many of the things that we're doing for the Navajo Nation. Our people are concerned. President mentioned farming, drinking water, also livestock. What are we going to do? I mean, a lot of our livestock in the region utilize the water. Are we going to be standing there 24 hours at night trying to chase the livestock away from the river? That's going to be tough. You know, we need to let the federal government know that we are in need of assistance. Either be it who's going to give us help us with drinking water, who's going to help us out with our livestock. You know, farming. It was said that even the farming is going to, you know, the whole crop this year is probably not going to be as profitable for a lot of you that live along the river. But what we want to do is be able to see more of the federal government standing up to their responsibility, helping the people. I know that there's a lot of damage that has been done to this river, all the rivers around the basin, and we want to be able to say, hey, EPA, what are you guys doing to help us out? And we do that with all due respect. So we just wanted to say the Navajo Nation is with you all here today, and let's continue to pray, and God bless the whole region. Thank you very much.
So my main concern is that I do live out in the valley. It's kind of emotional. I've lived here my whole life, and I'd love to see the water. I have an 18-month-old son. I was looking forward to him swimming in this water as he grew up. But my big concern is that I have a place in the valley now too. I live about 100 yards away from the river, and I want to, sorry, we're all no, it's okay. It's just really hard. I just want to know that, for me, I've always loved the wildlife here too. The valley has so many beautiful species that come around, bald eagles, falcons, hawks, bears, even though they're a little nuisance right now, but you know, you gotta love them. Mountain lions we saw first last week, which is incredible. But what's gonna happen if this water's not clean? I'm not gonna be able to see them again. We're not. We're gonna lose all that. So I really want to know, how long is this really gonna take? What's it gonna do? I mean, more along the lines of, are you also going to take proper measures to understand how it's going to affect wildlife outside of the water? Not just inside. And if we're going to know that soon. Because it's really upsetting to hear about. So I guess, do you have any plans in mind for the wildlife, and if you're going to test them, or, you know, if we're going to do research on them too, and on the valley? Yeah.
Yeah, that is something that we will be looking at. Most of these chemicals will not be acutely toxic to wildlife. There are some chemicals we are concerned about getting into the food chain and they get into the wildlife outside of the river. We will be testing the bugs and the fish and the things that they eat from the river. That's how their exposure is going to happen. We will be looking at that.
And go ahead, sorry. Well, if you could stop by and see me afterwards, I'd like to talk with you.
Yeah, sure. Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
what I would like to ask is that we continue to get as much information as possible. I've heard a few comments saying, you know, we need to interpret it for everyone. I think as a community, we will rise to the challenge of being able to understand what all these numbers mean. Do not hold back on the numbers. Do not hold back on the information. We will learn for ourselves what it means to be part of this new community.
I'm John Reborn with Citizens Animas Ditch Company, and I work with a lot of irrigators down in the Southern Valley. My question is, it seems that you have a lag time between collecting samples and analyzing the data. Do you know how long that is? And when you have data points, do you have a trend that you can tell us when we can use the water again?
Thank you for that question, because it's come up in a number of different forms, including from the President. Unfortunately, the reality is in doing analysis of metals, it takes time for that process to happen. So first we've got to collect samples, we've got to get it to the labs, and then there is a good day to 2 days for that, just the analysis to take place. But then we have to give it to our experts once we have the initial results to be able to understand what it means and to interpret it. And I know it's not it's not been quick enough for what the demand for the information is. We get that, we're pushing as hard to get that information out. The unfortunate side of it is to get it right. It takes a little bit of time.
Yeah, let me just add to that. That's half the story, obviously, of getting the data out, getting the analysis done, and putting it in a way that we can look at trends, as you said. One of the other issues is something that a number of you have mentioned. What does it mean? When can we open up for irrigation? When can we allow people to use the river again? And we're working very hard, as I mentioned before. You know, we talked about a regional approach to this. That's why we're in communication with the other EPA regions, with the other state agencies, the local agencies, and with Center for Disease Control to be able to look at those data and make a determination when those things can be opened up. And we're working as hard and as fast as we can to get those answers to you so you can get your lives back.
Well, you must be seeing a trend by now.
Well, you saw the trends that I was showing, and like I said, we're trying to make sure that that's not as short of an event as the initial spike itself. Right. So we want to take at least some amount of time for us.
2 days, 3 days, 3 more days?
That's what we're trying to find out from CDC and from the other stakeholders, how much time of that trend is sufficient for them to be confident that the water has returned to a reasonable level.
Well, there's 2 questions. One is, do you see a trend? And the other one you're answering is, when can we say it's safe? We like the gentleman before me, like to interpret the trends just along with you. And we appreciate if you didn't hold back that information as well. Okay, and the only thing I'll cheat here, but I have to wonder why Governor Hickenlooper took 5 days to get out here.
Hello, my name is Charlotte. And it just so happens that during the time of the oil spill in the Gulf that BP was responsible for, I seemed to be just spending a lot of time tracking that and saw how that came down. And our government and EPA took a total hands-off approach to that. Our newly elected President Obama did nothing, and BP took over the cleanup. What happened at that time was a bunch of Corexit was put into the ocean, and it made the oil go down to the floor of the ocean. There are things out there, and the gentleman that was here earlier was talking about something that might trap some of the stuff going down the river at a point. There are products, there are things that are algae-based, there are things that are mushroom-based, there are certain natural things that could possibly help. And I'm really impressed with the people who, Mountain Studies Institute, and people who are doing the research. If any of them could dig a little deeper to find out what some of these products might be. Anybody in this audience that feels led to get on their computer and see if they can find out what some of these products would be, because we keep looking to the EPA to help us. And if this community can come together and maybe come up with something that is that type of thing, because it's out there. It's out there. So that's what I have to say.
Okay. Thank you.
My name is Neil Gonsalves, and I've been a 20-year resident of Durango, and I've got over 30 years of engineering design experience. And in all of this, the EPA has not mentioned anything about engineering, about having engineers on your staff, and clearly the people up there are idiots or blundering. Now, in my design experience, because of the EPA, we have had to provide detention, sedimentation, or retention ponds on every project I've ever worked on at the onset of doing your project. Now you're patting yourself on the back about how you've got your sedimentation ponds in place. Why were those not in place beforehand? And number two, according to my calculations, if it has been flowing into the river at 800 gallons a minute since Wednesday at 10 a.m., it has put in 5,184,000 gallons, in addition to the 3 million you guys are claiming that just went into the river initially. So you're lying to everyone about what's going on. You really don't know what's going on at all. You can't answer any of the questions effectively because you really don't know. And thank you for creating Love Canal in southwest Colorado that's 100 miles long. You haven't answered anyway about how you're going to be able to clean it up because you can't. There is going to be no cleanup. We're going to be dealing with this for 10 or 20 years. Thank you. Oh, by the way, there's a story in Silverton's paper from July 31st, I believe it is. It's an editorial by a geologist named Dave Taylor. He has 47 years experience, and he was challenging your Red Bonita mine plugging plan by putting a concrete plug in the opening of the mine. It's going to back up the water. It'll have hundreds of pounds of PSI behind it. Those plugs will flow out, and the same thing will happen again. So you guys need to get your act together and have foresight instead of going, oh my gosh, gee whiz, we made a mistake, and now it's going to move to the river. You know, after. So. This is criminal negligence is what it is, and people ought to be held accountable.
So my name is Libby Goggle, and like most of you in this room, we all have varying interests about the situation and varying emotions about it as well. There are also people here representing a lot of different interests. A lot of us up here are deeply concerned about what's going on, what's going to happen, but one thing that I think we can all do at this point is take our collective interests and invest them in solving the problem from a ground-up perspective. If you look at Silverton, they've been trying to get the EPA out of Silverton for years. They don't want it there because it's limiting their economics for reopening new mines, and it's also limiting their tourism that's coming into that town. Now our tourism is screwed. As a raft guide, I can experience that because I'm unemployed like many of you in this room. As a former environmental studies graduate of Fort Lewis, I need a job. I want to go into this. I think a lot of us, whether we're me and recently graduated or have PhDs, can work together on a situation to figure out how from a ground up perspective we can try